what's up everybody, it's your boy Proftrof. Today we're doing a little bit of a different video. This is Spears Are Better Than Swords, Scientific Proof by Lindybeige. I think I got it. Anyway, let's check it out. I am a I'm a huge fucking fan of swords, spears, medieval weapons, and pre-medieval weapons.
Thank you for inviting me, Matt.
Very welcome.
Yes, and whilst I was there, we thought it would be a jolly good wheeze to mount an experiment with spears. Now, you see, the spear is a bizarrely neglected weapon in the worlds of historical European martial arts, or HEMA. It was the most common weapon in the past, the whole of the past, from Stone Age hunter-gatherers right the way up to the 20th century. Everyone used the spear, so it must have been pretty good. Far and away the most common soldier.
I mean, it was cheap and easy, right? Because you just point and, you know, it's like a dick. You point it at the right target and you shove it in, and let fate take its course.
The ancient and medieval worlds was a guy with a spear in one hand and a big shield in the other. So this combination must have been really good to have proven so popular with so many people for so flipping long, and yet it's neglected. Now, HEMA people, they know their swords. Oh yes, they know their swords. They've all tried backsword.
And I'm pretty sure that, like, we see swords in everything, like movies, TV shows, all that shit. But I think in history, swords were not used that often. Like, I'm pretty sure swords were mostly like, what do they call it? Like a fucking side weapon. Like your second weapon is a sword. And it was usually really expensive to make a sword because, like, it's, you know, it's steel during the entire thing. With a spear, you have a little steel on top of it. Like, sometimes you don't even need that shit. But yeah, you just have a little steel on top of it. With the sword, it's the whole.
And small sword and long sword and great sword and messer and, you know, all those. But most of them have never used a spear before. So it's worth trying the experiment. Are spears better than swords? How can they possibly be? Because everyone knows a sword, great, right? But no, spears are really good, as these experiments, I think, clearly show. Although they also show that the spear has certain vulnerabilities. Now, yeah, importantly,
like, if you have, the way I think a spear is way better than a sword is, like, sword is a little bit, it has more utility, you can say, because it's like, you know, with spear you thrust it and that's it. With a sword you can slash, you can thrust, you can do the backhand thing where you grab it by the fucking handle and you smash someone's face in with the grip. But with a spear you can't really do anything else besides, you know, stab shit. But if you had 100 people with spears, I think that would be way better than 100 people with swords. Like, maybe in a 1v1 maybe it's worse, but the more you have, the better it is, I think, because, you know, you can protect each other's flanks and all that good shit.
The people you're about to see are not experts in spears. They've all used loads of swords loads of times, but most of these people have never picked up a spear in their life, and those that had used it very seldom and not in combination with shield. So let's get on with the experiment. But before we do, if you find this very interesting and you want to know more, I've uploaded a longer version of this video which has all 65 bouts in it, as well as quite a bit of pre- and post-match analysis from Matt Eason and me. Right, let's get on with it.
8-foot spear without shield against one-handed sword. Go!
Here you see the essential problem for the swordsman. He cannot reach his opponent. He can weave about and parry with his sword to keep himself safe, but the only way he can win the fight is to close with his foe. Once up close, he should beat the spearman. But look how fast the head of the spear is. A sudden charge can work.
Okay, so these people are inexperienced in using a spear. So anything besides colossal defeat is not important, you know? If it's a draw, spear wins.
In close, the spearman is doomed. But most charges fail. Closing with a spearman, it turns out, is really difficult. Really difficult.
Ooh, yo, you got stabbed, bro.
Really?
3 times.
Difficult. Good solid chest hit, but it's not impossible.
Oh, he blocked that. Oh, he blocked that shit so
The shorter
fucking
weapon,
nicely.
once up close, has lots of options. The spear's length becomes a drawback.
This looks so fucking fun to do. I wish we had this shit somewhere in Bulgaria. We probably, I might check it out. Where he stabbed him. Nuts. That is like, what the fuck? That
In
just
these
killed
bouts
me.
between a spear and a variety of one-handed weapons, the results were spears 9, others 3.
What the fuck? I thought this would be where the spear had the biggest disadvantage in 1v1s without a shield.
But surely it would be easier for the swordsman to close with the spearman if he had a shield. So let's start him off with a buckler.
Right, well we might expect a bit more
buckler.
success from the swordsman.
The little thing.
Possibly they didn't open with their most skilled user of the buckler though. Watch how his buckler swings off to the left as he attacks, and he's dead. A more effective technique is to hold your shield in front of you. This guy gets in, and then the end is pretty
That's funny.
quick.
That's funny.
Alas though, this technique is not a guarantee of victory.
Oh, he got stabbed in the...
Sometimes the swordsman got in, but more often not. This doesn't count though. If they hit each other, that's a double, and no one scores.
That's it.
This is a good fight. Good defensive work there. Feints high, goes low, got him. Adding
that
a
was so
buckler
cool.
helped a bit.
He went
Sword
like-
and buckler men won 2 bouts to the spearman's 4.
Wow.
Well, it seems that we might need a bigger sword. So let's try some long swords.
What about... I would think you would need a bigger shield, my guy, not a bigger sword. I mean, if they were to do the whole Roman shit, I think the spear would be really ineffective, you know? The fucking, those huge tower shields and a gladius or a stabbing sword for really close range. I think this, you just fucking charge with the shield, it cannot possibly hit you in any way, because the shield is like, it's protecting your whole front. So the opponent is just fucked. I think in a situation like that, yeah, the spear would be fucked up. I mean, that's pretty much in history how the Romans beat the Greeks, right? Because the Greeks really like to use their hoplites and shit, which are basically dudes with spears, really long spears.
Now everyone here had been to
And they were
loads of
fucking everyone at
longsword
that time.
lessons.
The Greeks,
This
I
man
mean.
adopts the textbook
Romans as well,
ox
but yeah.
stance and closes and finishes with what they call zwerchau.
Damn, this dude seems really good with the fucking longsword, my
This
guy.
wasn't the universal result of longsword versus spear, however. This chap did get in once again,
Oof, oof.
but in the main it was a tale of dying swordsmen. In the bouts of longswords against spears, it was spears 4, longswords 2.
All right then. What if the sword is a lot bigger? Let's try a socking great big two-handed spy-hander.
These men have learned
Zweihänder.
greatsword patterns and tried some out. They are big and scary, but they are predictable.
Ouch.
And this was the pattern for what followed. Massive Zweihanders losing out to the much more nimble and precise spears. Spears 4, greatswords 0. This was a surprise to me, a mild surprise, but I was expecting some success with the greatsword against the spear. I would say that one of the reasons that the greatsword has failed was that the longer a weapon is, if it's made out of nylon, then the floppier it is. And so a real greatsword, which would have been made out of much stiffer metal, would have fared a bit better against the stiff wooden spears that we were using. But I think that's a minor point. I think more importantly, it was the technique that the greatsworders had chosen. They used these big swings, which might work against a long ponderous pike, for instance, which is a much slower weapon than a quick, nimble spear. Also, greatsworders tend to be taught how to fight using a greatsword against somebody else who's also, rather bizarrely, armed with a greatsword. In Hema, most people are taught a weapon against...
Isn't greatswords a really rare historical weapon? Like, extremely fucking rare to see someone with a greatsword. Like, great weapons as a whole, besides halberds and great what the long axes, whatever that was a thing called.
Against itself, even if in real battles that would almost never happen. And if someone in a battle is using a greatsword, you don't send a greatsworder to take him on, you take him on with something else. It would be a rather bizarre combination. But anyway, had the greatsworders instead used those second quillons a little way up the blade and put their hand up like next to that, and then their other hand right down by the pommel, they would have turned their greatswords into shortish spears, and then I think they would have done a lot better. Now, we didn't run that particular experiment, but we did use some half-swording with a different weapon.
A change in technique now, sports fans, as we pit spear against longsword used half-sworded.
This does not seem like a really good idea. Like the thing that I feel like made, like the thing that worked for the longsword was quick engages and using the longer reach, like longer than a shorter sword, to strike really fast. This seems like a very bad idea. To limit your range and not increase your speed.
Technique stiffened the slightly floppy nylon blades and seemed to encourage the swordsman to get stuck in. First blood to the swordsman. The general pattern was that either the fight was a quick victory for a fast-stabbing spearman, or a longer and much messier tussle with the half-sworder coming out on top.
I guess it's more defensive because you have more control over it. I don't know.
A tie. Spears 3, half-sworded longswords 3.
So far it seems that the spears are carrying the day, but surely it will be much easier for the swordsman to close with the spearman if he has a big shield to help him. Science!
Now with a large shield, closing with a lone spearman becomes easy.
What was this called? Kite shield, I think.
However, most of our test subjects had not used a shield like this before and were still unhelpfully wary. But as long as the man with the shield holds it flat on in front of him, he's fairly safe. But the longer he hangs back, the more chances the spearman has to score a hit. He tries holding it sideways on, which doesn't work as well. Hold your shield in front of you. Another thing that went wrong was people ducking their heads and blinding themselves as they advanced. Don't do this.
Yes! That was suicide.
Why is the shield moving so much? Like, shouldn't it be? Oh, I don't think they have the straps. Usually, I think usually you have like these straps that get on your forearm, so your shield wouldn't do what their shields are doing, where it gets like all floppy around, you know. And you'd have more a stable state.
Head up, shield forward, and charge in. Works every time.
This dude seems to know his shit. Ooh.
This one
Hit him
takes
like
a bit
3
longer.
times,
But
bro.
whoa! Keep your shield in front of you. Oh, come on, get in! Get in there, man! This is painful to watch. Stylish finish, though. Here we have how to use a spear versus how not to use a shield. Pink Legs is keeping his foe back with lots of quick thrusts, high and low. He goes low and scores a hit to the knee there. The shieldsman drops his shield. No, keep it in front of you, opening him up to a good thrust to the throat. You can see in the close-up that would have been fatal to an unarmoured man. Enraged, Red Truce swings wildly with his sword arm and at the same time swings his shield out to the left, opening him up to another deft thrust to the throat, which this time ends the matter. One chap tried using a cross-grip medium shield. These don't work so well. Ooh, straight to the throat. That looks painful. Another thing that was tried was tripping over the opponent's spear and crashing into him.
Well, it wasn't exactly elegant, but it did the job.
Scores on the doors. Spears 7, swords 6. The odds are definitely improving for the swordsman now.
Now to pit sword and shield against spear and shield.
Okay.
This makes a huge difference because now the spearman has to use his spear one-handed, which is much slower.
Yeah, I think this is. Why don't they use the Spartan? You know, the little, the upwards technique thing. Does that not work?
Than when using two hands, and I don't think anyone here had ever tried it before. I expect victories for the swordsman. Some spearmen tried holding their spears overarm like this, and quickly learned that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I think he's holding it too much on the backward, so he has no balance that way that he's holding it. If he holds it in the middle, he'd have way more balance. I don't know. Maybe it just doesn't work.
No one tried using overarm technique twice. It's hopeless.
That bad?
Another failed experiment was spear and buckler. You swap all the vigour of two-handed spear for the protection of a teacup.
I think their biggest problem is when they're using a one-handed spear is because they're holding it backwards, they get more reach, but they have zero fucking balance on the spear because the front is way heavier than the back. So after they swing once, it takes... You see how floppy it gets on the front? Because they cannot pull it back fast enough. So it gets... I think that's their biggest
The left-handed
mistake here.
spearman was at a
But I
lesser
have no idea, I've never
disadvantage,
used a spear in my life.
but still died. We learned that spear and shield is very vulnerable to sword and shield. Oh, and that violence, as here, can sometimes triumph.
Jesus.
So now the situation has reversed. Swords, 6. Spears, 0.
Oof.
On to the group round. The spear, of course, is a battlefield weapon used by large formations of many men. For the first 4 bouts, therefore, the swordsmen were required to attack from the front at first. It was messy, and the spearmen were all new to helping each other out. A spearman can parry blows aimed at his neighbours as well as those aimed at himself, and the easiest targets to hit are not the man opposite, but the men either side of him.
Come on! Help him out!
Nevertheless, all 4 bouts were won by the spearmen,
Yes!
even if they themselves didn't quite know how they pulled off a victory against experienced swordsmen. I think my shouted encouragement possibly helped.
Quick! Spearman!
Why was this guy hesitating? He had 3 people with their backs turned to him and he was like, should I stab them? Should I not stab them? Should I wait for them to turn? Just stab them, bro. Shove that spear up their ass. My guy. Help your buddy.
Come on, Spearman!
Help him.
Help your mate!
Jesus fucking
Oh!
Christ.
Yeah, that's...
Is he
Swordsman, you're dead!
You're dead!
hit him one more
Go.
time?
Next, the swordsmen were told that they were free to launch their attack from any angle they pleased. Again, things got messy, but the odds swung in favour of the swordsmen, who won some costly victories.
Stay still.
Good hit.
I suggested that the spearmen countercharged. When they heeded me a bit, this led to a flawless victory.
Very nice.
I mean, one guy charged, the others were like,
Now, sit back and marvel at the pinnacle of spearmanship that came out of all we had learned so far.
where is his weapon?
Oh, yeah.
Are you going to be putting Benny Hill over that one?
In the group bouts, when attacking from the front, spears 4, swords 0. When attacking from any direction, spears 1, swords 3.
So, what have we learned? Well, I haven't learned all that much because all these experiments confirmed what I had discovered many years ago back in my university days when I was doing loads of reenactment, fighting in Dark Age style battles with almost all the time spear and shield. Those were our primary weapons and we tried them against loads of combinations, and so we found out that the spear will beat a sword, that a sword and shield will usually beat a spear, but the spearman stands a reasonable chance if he's good, that sword and shield will beat spear and shield pretty much every single time, but that in group fights it's a different story. In group fights the spearmen are able to help out their neighbours very, very well in ways that swordsmen simply can't.
Plus, the back line of the spears can stab the people in front that are charging the front. So, lines in a spear wall, there's like people on the front, people behind them. Usually the spear would be long enough where the dude behind the front guy can stab the dude in front of the front guy.
And
That would be
spearmen will
good.
beat swordsmen pretty much every time unless the swordsmen are able to surround, penetrate, break up the formation of the spearmen, so the spearmen can't act as a cohesive team, in which case it becomes a free-for-all which could go either way. But do remember that spearmen in historical reality didn't just have spears, they had other weapons dangling from their belts. They had daggers, hatchets, maces, swords, or some backup weapons, so that when the spears did get broken up, they could then just ditch their spears, perhaps throwing them first, and then draw some shorter weapon, and then they've evened up the odds again. So there you go. In summary, spears are good. And keep your shield in front of you!
I like this fucking dude. This dude's cool as hell. I want to check out more videos if there are any like this. So you who suggested this, you know who you are. I hope you see this, and I hope you suggest some more videos like this. This was crazy fun. This was extremely fucking fun. I want to see more of these. This was fucking fun. Oh yeah, this is Rome Total War 2. Yeah, it was a decent game, I guess. Not Rome Total War 1. That shit was fucking amazing. Anyway, I'll stop the video here. I've talked enough bullshit for one video. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Everybody have a nice fucking day.